Since I haven't done this before, I have no clue what I could do wrong. Everything.
So no gap.
Yeah, no gaps.
No specific skill.
Yeah, maybe using a bigger variety on like different skills, but I guess it's a little hard in this session since, well, let's see. Yeah, just using different skills. I hope that makes sense.
Using a variety of skills.
Last time I basically just got open questions. It was really boring.
Yeah, and
But
then
this time
you
it's
have nothing to
reflect
write
on.
Yeah.
But yeah, since we just talked about whatever. Yeah, do you already film? Fine.
Yes, great. I will set the time. Whenever you're ready.
Is that filming ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, nice to see you again. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm excited for the test results.
How did your week go?
Yeah, it did go okay. Yeah, I was studying as I always do because of the upcoming exams. I had a lot to do, and yeah, I was spending a lot of time with my boyfriend, which was very nice. And yeah.
So yeah,
That's
everything went alright, I guess.
Yeah, he's also, I mean, I told him that I went here, and yeah, he's also excited for the test results because you want to know if there's something like that could help me. Yeah, but I don't think that there will be something wrong.
Have you talked to him about going here before you came here?
No, after, because yeah, I mean, as I told you, I'm a little bit scared that because my relationships always end very fastly. That's why I was coming here, but I thought if I tell him that I am afraid that our relationship will end very soon, he would probably be afraid as well. So I didn't tell him because, yeah, but after it I was thinking about it a lot, and then I thought, better be honest and tell him that I went here, and yeah, then he will also be, yeah, then he also doesn't need to worry about anything after we get the results.
So you were afraid that he would judge you for going to a psychologist or to a counseling session?
Not really for judging going to a psychologist, but rather that if he would know that I am afraid that our relationship could end soon, that then he would be afraid as well.
Okay.
That's why I didn't want to tell him, because sometimes, yeah, this can happen.
Right. And how did he take it then when you told him that you came here?
He was surprised, but yeah, then he said, yeah, he understands, because I told him that I want to go here because I want to make sure that our relationship is fine, and that we can stay together for a long time, and yeah, that he said that he understands and that he thinks it's a nice idea, and that he also want to stay with me, and yeah.
So do I get that right, that it was a good conversation with him talking about going to a psychologist?
Yeah, yeah, but still, I mean, I'm a little bit scared that probably he will think, no, that I'm crazy or something. Yeah, I mean, you never know. Yeah.
That's true. Is there anything else you would like to talk about right now? Okay, then yeah, we, as you already said, we did like the testing last session. And as I explained last session as well to you, I just want to make sure that you have that in mind while looking at the test, that like doing a test is an indicator for me to get a better picture of you and to get to know you a little better, but it doesn't mean that you are this person or whatever. It doesn't put a label on you or whatever. Just kind of just take the test as it gives some sort of information about you, but it doesn't mean that this is the way you are. I think we've talked about that last time as well. And also, if you have any questions, whatever, like you can always ask. I can always explain further. And before talking about the results, I would like to ask you how the testing, like the procedure actually went for you.
Yeah, I think it went okay. I mean, some questions were a little bit strange, where I didn't really know what they were measuring, but I mean, I think that's the purpose of the test, so yeah, I just tried to fill the test out as good as possible.
So it felt alright for you doing the test?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is good for me to hear. Yeah, so we did a few tests with you, and the first one I would like to discuss is a test that deals with like different ways of coping mechanisms. And yeah, so the test is compared to a normal group for women, well, between 18 and 25, but yeah, fits to your age range. And they have 8 different, 8 different aspects. And yeah, as you can see here, out of 8, on 4 you scored a little different than the average person, but 4 of them you like the normal group. So yeah, well, let's start with the first one. You scored a little higher on confrontative. Can you explain to me what that could mean, or?
On confrontive coping, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a problem, I will always confront the person I have a problem with. I
Yeah.
think that's the easiest way, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also it comes a little with like that you aren't afraid of risk taking. So as you said, you confront somebody with the problem, whatever. So it's not that you are afraid of their response.
Yeah.
Do you think that relates somehow to you?
I don't know if I am that risk taking. Yeah, but I would say that I am very confrontive. So this aspect fits to me.
Yeah, the second one would be distancing, which basically means that the way, or well, how high or how low you score on that one is how much you detach yourself from one situation. So if you are high on distancing, you kind of, you try to detach yourself from the situation and minimize the significance for you. And you score a little low. So what that means is that you take things like you really take a situation, maybe personal, but you really you deal with it. It's not that you actually try to ignore, which makes sense with the confrontive part. They try a little tight together. Again, and that is something we've talked about last session as well. You score a little low on seeking social support, which means that problems you have maybe or situations you deal with, you don't really try to find someone to talk about it to, you try to fix it yourself or deal with it yourself.
No.
Can you relate to that?
Yeah, normally I do things on my own, and the only person I would talk to is probably my boyfriend, but normally he's not a big help, so I can do things on my own.
Okay. And then the last one, which was different than average, is the positive reappraisal, which basically means that you try to find a positive meaning for something that happens in your life, or for your own personal growth, and you scored a little low on that, which then says that you might see things a little more negative than they actually are.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I would rather say that I always try to be very realistic, but might be that that's more negative than most people.
You scored a little low, but not in actual way. So as you said, it could just mean that you're more realistic. They also tested where you scored as the average person on is self-controlling. The way you actually regulate your own feelings and actions, and accepting of responsibility. Also escape and avoidance behavior, and also plan for problem solving. Would you have expected to score differently on those aspects? Or do you have a question to those aspects?
Can I see them again?
Here,
No, I think it fits very well. Probably I'm not always that, I didn't expect to be on average on plan for problem solving, because I also think that I'm very impulsive, but yeah, if I'm on average, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll talk about impulsive behavior a bit later a little bit, and yeah, let's just go with it. If you have any questions, you let me know. The second test we did is like an interest test, and measures some different characteristics you might have, and again, you scored average on a few ones and a little higher or lower on others, which is a normal thing. So one of them I wanted to talk about is hostility. So this basically describes this feeling like that you're easily irritated, and as you said, sometimes having a temper, like try to be a little impulsive, and that you argue a lot or more frequently than others. Yeah,
that might be true, because I often have lots of arguments with my boyfriend, so I would not describe it as hostile, but makes sense if it describes how many arguments someone might have.
and how does it make you feel like seeing this result?
Yeah, I think that only because I have many arguments, that still doesn't mean I'm hostile, but
and a different one I'd also like to focus on a little is the anxiety one. You scored again a little above average, not really high, just above average, which basically anxiety means that you're a little more tense, more nervous than others, and might have more like fearful emotions.
Yeah, I mean, as I told you already in the last session, I'm afraid that my relationship might not hold. As my relationships in the past did always break up very fastly. I think it's true that I am more anxious than probably most of the people.
So you can relate to this score. And then another one you are a little above average is psychoneuroticism, which basically this is like the overall score of this test. And as we just talked about, you scored on a few sub-dimensions a little higher, so the overall score is a little higher as well. So it just says that you have a little more, that you are physically a little more in distress than others, and but we'll talk about that a little more in the end, which is more like the overall score for the whole test. A third test we did is the NEO-PI, and that's again a personality test, and it's based on a 10,000 people sample, and it's universal. So that is actually a really widely used test, and it has like 5 big traits which are measured with different questions, and they are extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and openness to experience. Do you kind of have an understanding what that, like which word means what?
Yeah.
Okay. If not, you can always ask me. We're going to go through them a little more in detail. On the dimension extroversion, you scored on average, but agreeableness a little above average, and an agreeable person actually is really concerned about others, and tries to help, tries to have social harmony, and tries to not argue, is always honest and trustworthy, and you scored a little high on that, a little higher than others. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that if I'm more trustworthy than others, that's a good thing. So I didn't know that, because you also said that I'm especially hostile, so I don't know how that fits, but I'm very concerned about my relationships, so it might be related to that I always try to for that everything's fine and everyone is happy.
Yeah, and some like the test they connect different than others. So as you just said, some tests might focus a little more on this and then others more on that. Yeah. Right, and then the second one or the third one is conscientiousness, which you scored a little high as well, and that basically means that you like to follow a plan, you and stick to the plan as well, and you have your goal in your mind to try to reach that goal. You know how to, and especially you know how to approach these things. So it's really important to be competent, not just light or whatever. Like you want to know what you're doing, and accomplishments and achievements is really important.
Yeah, I think that fits very well. As I told you, I have already a plan how to pursue my career and how my house will look like, where I will live, and everything is planned. So
I thought about your plan as well when I read this, because it seems like you have it all figured out already. Okay, and then another one is neuroticism, and you're also a little high on that.
what does it exactly mean?
Right, so this means that you have the tendencies to experience negative feelings more than positive ones. For example, anxiety, and we've already talked about this, anger, depression, and you might get a little more or a little easier upset than others, and actually like react to things somebody would basically score low on this one, might not react that much in general. It doesn't mean that they don't feel or that they don't, or that they feel happier, it's just that they don't react that much. So as we already said, like sometimes maybe a little, like you react a lot.
Yeah, I would say that I'm probably more anxious or have more negative emotions with regard to my relationship, but I think that is also a reason, as I told you, because my last relationships always broke very fast. So I didn't think that I'm especially experiencing negative feelings in general, but it's true that I get upset easily, especially with things that are important to me, but probably it's fine.
Okay.
And
and which is really interesting, and that is something we've talked about last session as well, is that you said you have the feeling that you, or that your ex-boyfriends sometimes say you control them, and you weren't sure if that is actually true, or if this is just...
Yeah, I thought it isn't true.
Right. Right, and so which is really interesting with this test, and this might help you as well, and me especially, is that the combination between scoring high on conscientiousness and neuroticism leads to some sort of a strong need to control, so that would support that you might be a little too controlling. Which again doesn't mean that this is who you are, it's just the combination of those two could lead to that. But we can talk about that later as well. Because you weren't sure if that's true. And then there's one more test we scale, and this is like, you can look at the scale. It measures attachment style, and again, we've talked about that last session as well. How you feel about relationships, and as you just mentioned, you feel like they tend to break up quite soon. And this test has like two scales, as you can see, and you can always score low or high, or low and high on anxiety and avoidance behavior. And we already talked about anxiety and means that you leave. And so it's a little high on anxiety, and we've talked about that you more worry about stuff, and you worry about your relationship if they tend to last or not, like does it actually work. And regarding to the attachment style, this can be also put in relationship to the relationship you have to your parents or your family in general. And then the other scale is the avoidance behavior, and that means, how much you're actually worried, or how much you depend on others. So that you scored low in avoidance means that you tend to depend on others and not, like that you try to have your boyfriend around you. Don't just be by yourself and want to be by yourself. Yeah, you also depend on the other person. And last session we talked a little about your family situation, but with these kind of scale, I just kind of like to know, or like you to elaborate more on your parents, or your, like how close you are to your family.
Yeah, I mean, we have a good relationship, but they do live in another city, so I would say that I am autonomous. Yeah, and I see them like every 2 weeks or something.
And do you feel like you talk about them, with them about everything?
Yeah, not really. I mean, we have a good relationship, and I talk with them about all the stuff relating to my studies, but I wouldn't tell them that I'm, for example, anxious about my relationship or something. Yeah.
Can you elaborate why you wouldn't tell them?
We've never talked about something like that, so I think it would feel very strange to suddenly. I mean, as I told you before, I mostly have more or less superficial friends, and then the most important person is my boyfriend, so I don't tend to talk about my deepest feelings to a lot of people.
Can you somehow relate this to this result?
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to the rather higher anxiety, because, as I told you, I'm anxious about my relationship. Low avoidance means that I depend on others. I don't know if I really depend on my boyfriend, probably. I mean, of course, I just want that we stay together, so somehow I might depend. That's more or less normal, I think.
Yeah, it's not only depending on others, it's more like, for me, it also says that you're less likely to maybe open up to others. And you already said that this might be hard for you.
Yeah, because I mostly have superficial relationships and to others, and with my boyfriend we have a very good relationship, but I didn't tell him when I went here. I mean, I told him then afterwards, but because it might be better if he doesn't know everything.
Okay, and can you elaborate more on that, why he shouldn't know everything? Or
as I told you before, I'm afraid that if he knows, that I am afraid that he will be afraid as well, and then the relationship is already damaged, and the breakup will come soon. So I think it's just better to not let him know everything, especially not the negative stuff about me. I mean, he should rather hold that positive view of me.
Okay, have you had any negative experience with opening up to one of your boyfriends? To an ex-boyfriend before?
I need to say that I open up very slowly normally. And the problem is that my experience is that if I tell them too much, for example, that when they really get to know that I want to know everything about them, that they then get afraid and the breakup will come.
So that's what you actually experienced before.
Yeah, and that's yeah. I don't do it anymore so fast.
Okay. Regarding to like the overall test results, like what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I can relate to the fact that I'm a little bit more anxious than probably most people. What else? I don't know if I'm really hostile. I can't really relate to that. I mean, yeah, feeling easily irritated and having, yeah, I mean, I sometimes have temper outbursts, but yeah, if hostility in this case includes having arguments from time to time, I might be hostile, even if it sounds very yeah, strange. Yeah, and the thing that you said, I'm controlling, yeah, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah. Can you elaborate why you wouldn't be sure on that?
Yeah, I mean, I understand I might be higher on neuroticism because I'm a little bit anxious, and I'm also high on conscientiousness because I'm very into planning, and my studies and academic success is very important to me. But I don't know why this combination should mean that I'm controlling. I mean, as I told you before, it is important to me to know several things. But as I told you already, I think that it's still normal.
Okay, so you wouldn't consider yourself as controlling?
I don't know if other people are like me as well in this regard, but I don't feel like it's not normal.
Yeah, we are already coming to the end of the session. And what I'd like to focus on for like the last couple of minutes, I guess, is how are you going to like deal with those results? Because for me it seems like you kind of expected these results.
Apart from the controlling aspect. Yeah, I mean, it's not that I think I'm totally not controlling, but yeah, I think it's normal, so I don't know. And as you also told me before, it doesn't mean that the test is totally true. So yeah, I don't really know how to like deal with it. I mean, it's useful to know that I'm probably a little more anxious than other people, and this might also explain why I'm often worried about several things. Yeah, probably it might be useful if we could talk about how to use the information during the next session. Yeah, and I think I will tell my boyfriend that I'm a little bit anxious, but not about the controlling thing. And otherwise he will believe it.
So you're planning on telling your boyfriend about the test results, but might not everything?
Not
Okay. Well, I would suggest that next time we try to pick some of the aspects and talk about it a little more in detail. Now it was just like an overview, and then we can actually like focus on them and try to figure out how to use these results to maybe work on some SOC behavior. Because if I got that right, that was the reason why you actually came here. So you can, next session we talk about a little more detail. If you have any question, till next question, just let me know.
Yeah, I think it might be useful if we could use the results to make sure that the relationship holds.
Okay, then I see you next week. Well, this was weird. I I like it better when the client just talks and I just sit there and just ask them random questions. But I guess it was okay. Sometimes I got mixed up, and again, I guess if this is like a real session, I might have been a little better prepared, because now I sometimes had to look some things up and I was like, what, did I really just say that? Is it really true? But I thought it was alright. I had way more questions planned for like how do you deal with this, like what are you going to do, like a little like you did, like how are you going to like tell this person, but then we were already done. So I would have not explained everything, like went through every little step that much if I would have had the time better scheduled, but I thought it was okay, like not that bad, it's alright.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I think you did it well. I mean, if you don't know, but I mean, we're not very used to the test,
No.
so it's not that easy to explain it in a common language. But I
Right.
think you did it very well, and
Yeah, because sometimes I try to not read, okay, this means this, but sometimes it just took me a little while to actually like process, like what does it actually mean? Like,
Yeah.
so
so
yeah, but I guess it's alright.
yeah.
Do you want to start?
Sure. To your, am I the person who's talking about the learning goals? I think so. There was no gap in between, and you used a lot of like reflecting and open questions, a couple of closed questions, but I think in this setting they're quite okay because you kind of want to get them to the point. I think it was like a really fluent conversation, and the only thing that I have is that you always said like, alright, we're here, but we will talk about that later.
Okay.
And I wouldn't do this in this setting because the client you tell the client, oh, here are your results and you are this and that, but we will talk about that later. So if the client doesn't know what to do with it, he won't like put them together, and you didn't really talk about it later. So it was not like you said like, oh, earlier we said that and that and that, so this sums up into something. I also like that you were like really reassuring, like, oh yeah, I thought about that as well. And otherwise I have, especially in the end, I really like that you went back to the family and showed her their graph and told her like, you are here and what do you think about that. And I also liked how you like tried to match the results with what she said on what she thinks about her relationship and stuff, so on. So I think all in all you did this really well, and I think what I recognized is that in the beginning you were like really unsure how to present the results.
Yeah.
And it got really better and better from test to test. But you should, what I would do in your position is like you should sum up the test after you've done, after you've explained one. So you have like one summary of one test and then go to the other and ask the client how she feels about that and what if she has anything to add or if she can relate to that again, or yeah. That's what I would do in your position.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But sometimes it felt a little like all over the place, so they would like put a bit of structure on it.
But sure, if that's like a real client, you probably know. You compute their stuff by yourself and so on.
Yeah, that is.
I agree with most of what you said, even though I think you used too many close questions. Your goals were to have no gaps in the conversation and more variety of skills. But I think you used, most of the time you used open and close questions, and I have just noted one or two reflecting skills. I don't know, because you said she had more. Maybe I
it's
just
like
missed them.
4 or something.
It's alright.
Okay.
So,
It's fine.
You didn't need a break, so the conversation you kept it quite easily. You started the conversation right off with a close question. But then the second one was you reflected her emotions, which was good. You also try to clarify things when you didn't get them at the first try? So you asked them, did they get it right? And it was a good conversation, blah blah. And then, so that's good. Always when you're not sure about something, just clarify it. You use one double-barreled question, which is fine. I think I've used it a lot. What else? Yeah, when you started explaining the new PI, it was good that you mentioned what the sample was based on and how many people were involved and stuff like that. But then you asked her, well, you named it 5 domains, and then you said, do you know what those mean, or should I explain them to you? But then I think, because all of the domains are made up of so many different facets, you should explain them anyway. And then you asked her if she does understand them, and she said yes, but then later on she asked again, what does neuroticism mean?
Yeah, that is true.
But you explained all the facets or the domains anyway. So first you asked her if she knows what they mean. She said yes, but then later on, when you went through them one by one, you explained them anyway, which was good. But then you should
I guess
ask her anyway.
I skipped the one where she scored average. I don't even know if I should have done that, but that was because I skipped 2 of them, and I thought if she knows what openness to experience means, I'm not going to explain it if she scored average anyhow. But I just
just
no of course.
But I thought it was good that you asked about it. So if she heard about them, it's maybe easier to relate to them anyway than to when you explain it out of the blue, so she doesn't know anything about them.
So I mean, it's a good thing to ask if she has heard about it before, but
I
then
know again.
if she hasn't studied psychology, she won't know that those 5 domains are made up of so many different scales, and they all mean something else.
No, that is right.
Yeah, something like that. Anything else? No, that's basically it.
That was so weird. Like, okay, next time we'll do this now.
Okay, while you think the ending was weird, I think the beginning was very natural. Right off the bat, you used reflecting skills. You asked open questions as well. I did like that you took your time as well in the beginning, because it flowed very nicely as a result. And I also enjoyed the fact that you related it back to the other sessions. So you mentioned things like, as mentioned before, the test results are unique for you. And so I think it was nice that you clarified these things to her. And then once you started going into the testing, you first of all started by summarizing the test itself, which is good. But I felt it could have been more extensive as well. And then also at the same time relate it back. So saying, with this, I think, was it the intelligence test that you also talked about, or was it personality first that you talked about?
First.
Okay.
How to cope with,
Okay. So then in that case, you would maybe say like, so this coping test, this was the one questionnaire that you filled out with, and then so it kind of makes it clear for her. So that's what I mean by it could have been more extensive, because of course, like as we already explained, like, you know what these tests were about, but in the case that the client didn't know, exactly. And what you said as well, I think that in the beginning I also kind of got the impression that there was not really a concrete system or layout of how to give the interpretations, because some things were a bit hazy. But then as it went on, it became more fluid and very good. I think that the questions relating to when you explained the results, they could have, they had the potential for a good discussion at some parts. But they were more. It was more like one question. So what do you think about this result? Then you as a client were very aware of the results, and you always related it back to your situation. But then from that point on, after, it was just kind of like, okay, so we'll talk about that later, or then you just moved on to the next test. So yes, of course, when you say we'll talk about that later, rather not say this, just so that's a good building block. But because that's how you did it, it was very good that you did use those last 10 minutes in the conversation itself to talk about discussion and relating it to her situation. And when you did go into discussion, you remained very non-judgmental. The client didn't at all feel that they were controlling. But then I think it was good that you kind of gave them the freedom to not like encourage them like, well, maybe, but you really should start thinking a bit differently, or those kind of things. You just kind of took the time, but you did so enough that she became aware. And that was good.
It's so long.
And yeah, that's all I have to say. So nice one.
Alright.